In this presentation, I want to explain why I believe that the concept of habit, as I reconstruct it, can help us better understand central philosophical challenges. My focus is on showing that much of legal philosophy, starting with H.L.A. Hart, relies on an overly limited conception of habit. By developing a richer and more realistic account of habitual behavior, we can rethink the foundations of norm-guided conduct as well. Let us begin with a conventional view. In his influential book, The Concept of Law, Hart criticizes habits and threats theory of legal obligation. According to this theory, people obey laws simply because they have formed a habit of obedience, reinforced by the threat of punishment. Hart rejects this view as too simplistic. He argues that habits, understood as mere regular repetitions of past behavior, cannot explain why people follow legal rules and social rules more generally too. Famously, Hart presents three key objections. First, he claims that regular behavior is not the same as rule following. People may act habitually without recognizing any rule behind their actions. Rules, by contrast, involve a critical and reflective attitude. When someone breaks a rule, others view it as a failure and criticize the person. This is what Hart calls the efficacy challenge. Second, Hart argues that rule following cannot be reduced to feelings of compulsion. People might comply with a rule because they feel pressured, but this feeling is neither necessary nor sufficient to explain genuine rule following. True rule following, according to Hart, involves recognizing a standard that guides behavior, not just responding to external pressure or unthinking repetition. Third, Hart emphasizes what he called the normativity challenge. Rules are not just regularities of behavior, they are standards people use to justify their actions and to assess the actions of others. This internal perspective is essential to understanding what it means to follow a rule. Many philosophers of law have taken these assumptions and these arguments as proof that habits play only a marginal role in explaining norm-guided behavior. In doing so, they assume a narrow and superficial conception of habit, as mechanical repetition, devoid of structure, evaluation, or even intelligence. I believe this assumption is mistaken. The concept of habit can be redefined in a much richer way. Indeed, the very possibility of this redefinition is, I believe, a central and yet overlooked convergence of several interdisciplinary literatures, from cognitive science, sociology to neurobiology, as well as classic, traditional, utilitarian, and pragmatist philosophy. Habit, as I reconstruct it, following this dispersed tradition of thought, is not necessarily mindless repetition. Rather, it is a structured disposition that reduces, I say, the marginal cost of attention and motivational effort. Habits organize impulses, expectations, skills through an environment into stable behavioral patterns. A habit, properly understood, encodes evaluations and links general principles to specific contexts. By lowering the effort required for certain actions, habits create a behavioral stability without necessarily excluding reflection or critical evaluation. They function as systems that manage cognitive and motivational resources, allowing for flexible and adaptive behavior over time. Moreover, structured habits help explain two distinct outcomes: compulsions and commitments. Compulsions arise when habits rigidly constrain action, eliminating alternatives. Commitments, on the other hand, are habits integrated into the agent's personality and own identity, and they are endorsed and sustained by reflective capacities. Seen this way, habits can address Hart's challenges. Regarding the efficacy challenge, structured habits explain how shared norms produce stable, coordinated behavior without reducing action to simple repetition. Regarding the compulsion challenge, distinguishing compulsions from commitments shows how habitual action can remain reflected and voluntary. Regarding the normativity challenge, habits, understood as structured dispositions, explain how people monitor, revise, and justify their actions based on socially reinforced patterns that they recognize as reasons for action. Even phenomena like sacrifice or principled action become understandable. By understanding habits as dynamic, structured systems, we see that difficult actions may be chosen as part of a long-term process of stabilizing or transforming one's patterns of behavior in the future. In conclusion, legal philosophy has too often dismissed the explanatory role of habits due to a narrow conception inherited from Hart. By redefining habit as a structured, intelligent disposition, we can better understand why people follow rules, not as a result of mechanical repetition or coercion, but as part of dynamic processes of action and evaluation. Habits, far from being opposed to normativity, are among its empirical foundations.